couple of minutes and we will chant Omkar 3 times, visualizing the Guru or Hari or Hara at your heart level. Hari Om Tat Sat. Today we are going to come to an interesting point because often people ask, is Shiva superior, is Vishnu superior, or if I'm a Vaishnavite, why should I pray to Shiva? If I'm a Shaivite, why should I pray to Vishnu? So we have these questions, and this is answered in both the Shiva Purana and in the Srimad Bhagavata. So I'm going to tell you one story, and that is of Markandeya. So in the beginning, we had a lot of rishis, people who were mystic in this country. And at that time, they would accepting that the fire, Agni, is a form of the divine. So they call Agni as the soul on fire, the aspiration of the soul to go towards the Paramatma. Jivatma moving towards the Paramatma is the goal of every being that is manifested in the world. So this Agni used to be worshipped. People would take the Agni to be a living god. They would do the Prana Pratishtha and they would worship the Agni because it has two faces according to the Vedic understanding. Both the faces, one is luminous light and the other is power. So Agni had both the luminosity, that is the wisdom, and the power means the Kriya Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Kriya Shakti. So the fire was worshipped and they had a number of Homa Kundas, Havan, and they did not use deities in those days. Then what happened was, as the people that succeeded them started becoming less and less intuitive, more and more language oriented, and therefore more and more logical in their thinking, the brains evolved in a different way. So what happened was they were not able to relate emotionally to the fire. Because if you say have an intimacy with your God, with the divine, how do you get intimate with the fire? Because it was not logical, though it is possible. So what they did was, when the rishis had certain forms within them, when they were in meditation, they took out these forms and then they gave it to their descendants, and they said, okay, you worship this form. If it is not Agni, it's okay. You see a being of light, it can have 2 hands, 4 hands, 8 hands, according to the qualities you give, the glories you give to that particular divinity that you consider supreme. So you had two groups of rishis. One was the Bhrigus Vamsha, the Bhargavas, and then there was the Angirasas who came after Angiras. So the Bhargava rishis, that is the Bhrigus descendants, one of which was Parshurama also, they said they would not shift from that fire worship. They said they would stay with that only, because if people had deities and then They would, because anyway the intelligence is coming down, the intuition is coming down. So people will suddenly have doubts, should it be this, should it be that? And then I get stuck to the form and not be ready to go towards the formless. So they will miss out on the last bit of the journey. But then the Angirasa people said that if you did not give people that little bit of a step that they could use to go higher, and they are not able to relate to the fire, and they do not have the deities also, they are left in limbo, neither here nor there. So then they had a conference between themselves and they decided, okay, we'll have both, some for these people, some for those people. Whoever can relate to the fire does fire worship, and who cannot will have the deities forms to help them. Then they had a discussion and they said, supposing we have both these going on, the descendants who are not intuitive necessarily and who may not understand will have a confusion. Should it be this or should it be that? So both Angirasa and Bhrigu decided that they would not stay in the same place. So the Angirasa followers stayed in what is today known as Bharat, India. And the Bhargava race went to the place where today it is called Iran or Persia in the early days. So the Bhargava people continued worshipping the fire, and the Angirasa people continued worshipping the deities here. And over a period of time, there was much mixing and merging among them. So you had the fire worship as well as the deities. And now, having become fire worshippers, the Bhrigu Bhargava people followed the Atharva Veda to a large extent. And many years later, the descendants who called themselves Parsis because they were in Persia, some of them, when they were persecuted, came to India and settled in the Bombay, that area, and Gujarat and those places. And they are still there, the Parsis, and have done a tremendous amount of giving because of the generosity of the king who gave them refuge at that time. This is just in passing, I'm telling you this. And one of the descendants of this Bhargava race was a rishi who was called Mrikandu. Mrikandu had no children, so he did a severe penance to have a child. You see, those days people wanted to have at least one son because he could continue the spiritual tradition. That was the importance. That was for them a dharma, not that they could have a son to whom they will give a property or because he will be the king or anything. Somebody that they can trust, that they can bring up on their own without any confusion, and then to whom they can hand over the value systems and the rituals and all the things that make up Sanatana Dharma, that he will carry on to future generations. So today, if we know some of these um, uh, value systems, some of the coded aspects of the Vedas, the mystical aspects of the Sanatana Dharma, its relationship with other dharmas around the world, it is because of these sages who were very meticulous and committed, dedicated their lives so that the value system will continue. So when Mrikandu did so much of penance, Shiva came and asked him, what shall I give you? So Mrikandu said, I want a son. Then he said, if you want a son, then I can give you two options. Either you can have a child who will live long but will be relatively dull, or you can have an intelligent child who will carry on your tradition, but he will die when he is 16 years old. So in that moment of enthusiasm, He realized what's the point of having a son who is no use to the society later. So even if he lives for a short while, he should be able to impart spiritual values and a good way of human living to the people who come afterwards. They thought of this for centuries, not just for that generation. So, this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. You remember I was telling you how Shuka was talking to Parikshit. So, Parikshit is asking him, see, people like you are the only people who can show us a way out because we are wandering in this endless darkness that we call samsara sagara. We are coming again and again, and we are doing the same mistakes again and again, suffering the same sufferings, come back, we never learn because of Maya. So he says, uh, how do we get over this? People are speaking of a person called Markandeya, the son of Mrikanda. And this Markandeya was blessed with a long life, so much so he was alive during the time of Pralaya also. And he watched the whole universe being swallowed up. Then he says, please tell us something about this Markandeya. So then this man starts the story. So he says, this will dispel, the story I'll tell you will dispel many apprehensions in the mind of people who are thinking about these things, also have other misapprehensions. So he says, I'm also going to tell you how Sri Narayana washes off all the impurities of the Kalikala. So he says this boy, Markandeya, was trained by his father from childhood until he was old enough to be invested with the sacred thread and given the Gayatri Mantra initiation. And after that, the boy studied the Vedas according to the scriptures. And soon he became very not terribly interested in the any fun of those days. And he came to know the deeper meaning of the Veda. And from that, he observed a vow of lifelong celibacy. He did not have any passion. He had only his sacred thread, and he used to have the munja grass around his waist, and he used the tree bark for clothing. He carried a kamandala, a staff, and the sacred darbha. And he wore the skin of a black deer and a rosary of the Rudraksha beads because he was very attached to Shiva and Vishnu. So that his character, his virtues, the punya will become high. He used to worship Sri Hari both in the morning and in the evening. And how would he do it? He would do the avahanam, that is, he would invoke Narayana into the sacred fire, the Homakunda, into the sun, into the Guru, and then into the Brahmanas who are doing the similar things by him. And he would also identify himself with Sri Hari. So, in other words, he was invoking the Mahavishnu into everything that was sacred around him. And he would go in the morning and evening for the sake of begging for food, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. He would give it to his guru, and after some time, he would eat it if he is permitted. Why if he is permitted? Because suddenly, if there was an unexpected guest, like another guru or teacher, he will have to be fed first. And if there is any leftover, then this boy would have it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have it. So he went on like this, worshipping Sri Hari for 1 crore of years. He conquered death, which is very difficult to conquer. So much so that Shiva, Brahma, the creator, Shiva is the source of the universe, Bhrigu, human beings, other created people, everybody was very astonished because it's an extraordinary achievement. So what he does is he sits in one place and he meditates on Sri Hari with a mind that is turned inwards and free from the kleshas. That is, if you remember in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you'll have 5 kleshas: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. What is avidya? Ignorance. Whatever is anitya, you think it's nitya. It's in that sense they say ignorance. Asmita is egotism, I. Likes and dislikes is raga, dvesha. Raga is you like something that makes you feel good, then you dislike the opposite because you don't want to be that thing to be taken away from you. And eventually, fear of death is abhinivesha. And Patanjali will say it is such a powerful force. I told you the other day also, every cell in your body has a fear of death because survival is compromised. So, having completely destroyed all the kleshas, and beyond sense perceptions, he's not looking at anything, his mind is completely in brahmachintana. And then he started doing tapas. And when he started doing tapas, it went on for years and years and years. 6 manvantaras he was doing tapas. And at that time, Indra got afraid. Indra is the enlightened mind. It's also the cosmic enlightened mind. And it's also the king of the Indriyas. So what does he do? He calls Kamadeva, Manmata, like he did in Shiva's time. Then all the Apsaras, the beautiful god, semi-goddesses of heaven, the Gandharvas who sing beautifully. And then he got the gentle spring season, then the wind, which is breeze, not a big tempest. And he always gets he also got the pet children of Rajas. You know, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Who are the pet children of Rajas? Greed, Lobha, and pride. He got all this and he went to the Pushpabhadra river on the northern slope of the Himalayas. And here many Brahmana sages used to do meditations, samadhi and things. It was a very beautiful place. They had peacocks and the Gandharvas came and the Apsaras danced. Kamadeva, that is Manmata, came with his bow and arrow, with the 5 flowered arrow. And then Kamadeva put the 5-pointed arrow on his bow, getting ready to shoot. And the sage, meantime, is sitting and in meditation. And then they got the chief of the Apsaras, her name is Punjikastali. And she was playing with the ball and running after them, so much so her waistband fell away and her clothes went away. And Kamadeva thought now is the time to shoot the arrow on the sage and it will agitate him. So he shot the arrow, but nothing happened. But the sage continued doing his meditation. He was not at all bothered. So when they saw all this, they were very surprised because nobody can be so detached. So they left everything, including Indra, and they all went away because they thought this is no use. We have done our best. Beyond this, we cannot do anything. Then, meanwhile, because Markandeya was concentrating his mind, Brahma Chintana, completely on Sri Hari, the Lord appeared before him in the form of Nara and Narayana. I have sent you all some pictures. The Nara and Narayana, if you remember, last time I told you, they were the children, twins of Dharma and Murti. So these were, they came And as soon as they came, he knew who they were. So he went and fell like a log on the ground. The book says Dandavat. Dandavat means, sometimes the Shankaracharyas and Jeers and all carry a stick with one flag like on top. That is a danda. And why is it carried? Because that is to remind them that when they do namaskaram to the Supreme, you fall flat like a stick. You don't bend only half your body. The entire body is prostrating. The body means the body, mind, every aspect of you. It's a complete Atma Sharanagati. So he fell down like that. His eyes were filled with tears. He could hardly see them. And then he kept saying, Namo Namaha, Namo Namaha. Then, when he felt better, he got a seat for them, washed their feet, and worship them the way we offer worship these days. You wash their hands, wash their feet, argyam, padyam, hastam. Then you give them sandalwood paste, incense, garlands. The same thing we do when we do puja. So why? Because we are invoking God at that point. And Markandeya, after doing all that, he says to them, you alone, that is to Narayana, as Narayana, you alone make the prana function. And following the prana, the vak, the speech, manas, and indriyas, all these, the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas, all of them, in all the embodied beings, not only just human beings, even of Brahma and even of Shiva, all of them, you are the one who makes them um, work. That is, you give them the life and you sustain them so that they will continue doing their duties. And being of such a high level, you behave as a friend of the soul, not just of the body, because our parents treat our body as a friend. Our friends treat the body as a friend. Our wives and children, everybody treats the body as a friend. But you are the friend of the Atma. And you become a friend of those people's Atma, of those who worship you with their Atma. So he says, and you're the one who can liberate anybody from the suffering of the human samsara. And you assume many, many forms. You can come like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, all that, to protect the universe. After you make everything continue, sustain everything, then just like the spider produces the web and then it swallows the same web, you also swallow everything that you have created. And what happens? Why do we go again and again? We come and go, because of our gunas, the impurities which happen because of karma or actions that we do, and the actions because of gunas, tamas, rajas, and kalam, time. A person who is caught up with all this, if he takes refuge on your feet, because you are the savior of the world, then those things can never contaminate him. And to attain those feet, sages have taken the spirit of the Vedas into their heart, do so much worship to you, constantly meditate on you. And we don't know any other retreat, because the Jivatma is afraid from all sides. The only way it gets out of the fear is holding the feet of the Lord. Even Brahma, he says, because he is not a permanent being, he is also afraid of Kala, time, which is a mere play of your eyebrows, because Vishnu moves his eyebrows and the time works. And then he says, in such a person, and I'm actually taking refuge at the soles of your feet, because you have come and stood in front of me. What more do I need to ask you? He says, this is such a big thing. And even though this Rajas, Tamas, Sattva, which are products of Prakriti, Maya, creates the whole universe, your sattvic form alone gives peace. The other two create suffering and infatuation. Therefore, he says, realizing this, the men who are wise in this world worship the form of Narayana, which is made of pure sattva without any mixture of rajas and tamas. If you remember earlier, I said a word to you in one of the earlier talks about Shuddha Sattva. And this form of yours, which is Shuddha Sattva, is very dear to your devotees. You are the inner control, Antaryami, controller. You're all pervading as Vishnu. You exist in the form of the Vishwam, the world. If you notice, some of these are names of the Vishnu Sahasranama. You are the Jagat Guru, the preceptor of the universe. And you come as Nara and Narayana. You have controlled your speech and you have promoted the Vedas. Whoever gets their judgment clouded by your Maya and who goes on into the areas that they do not want to go, such people come and hold your feet to help them go beyond all this. So then Narayana, accompanied by Nara, spoke to them and he said, you have already got Siddhi, he said, because you had concentration of mind on me, unceasing devotion, and you studied the Vedas, the spirit of the Vedas, through high penance and self-control. And we are also very pleased on your observing the vow of lifelong celibacy. So he says, because you have got all this, we meaning Nara and Narayana together, we will give you the Siddhi that you are capable of. So what do you want? He says. So Markandeya says, even obtaining a vision of your glorious form has come within the range of my senses, because I can even see you. Usually people see the Lord inside the heart, not with the physical eyes, because the physical Jnanendriyas cannot see the divine. You have to move into another dimension of consciousness. That is why when you move into that dimension of consciousness and you have an experience of the divine, when you come back to your regular dimension of consciousness, however high you are not able to describe that experience. So he says, I have got you. I don't really need anything from you, because I only want to know what is this thing called Maya. I want to have a vision of Maya. So they said yes to him. Tatastu, they said. And then they went away. Before this, Markandeya, when he was a child, when he was reaching 16 years, one day his mother was weeping and he wondered why she's weeping. So he asked her, why are you crying? All these days you were happy. So she said, when you were young and when we got you as a child, we had two desires given to us, options. Either we could choose a child that would live very long and would be rather dull, not interested in anything, or a child who would live for 16 years but would be very brilliant and very wise. We chose you. At that time, we didn't think that 16 years will come so quickly. And now that it is 16, we know that you will die sometime. And we cannot bear to lose you now that we are attached to you. So Markandeya tells his mother, you don't cry. Why are you worried? I am praying to, I am a Shiva Bhakta. I am also a Vishnu Bhakta. So I am doing the tapasya to Shiva also. Don't you have faith that he will protect you? So the mother just says yes and wipes her eyes so the son won't become demoralized. But he goes and he sits in front of the Shivalingam and he does immense tapasya, at which time Yama comes. Actually, first Yama sends his aides. He tells them, go and bring that soul, it's time. So when they all come, the attendants of Vishnu come down and say, you can't touch this child. So his aides go back and tell Yama that they are not allowing us to bring the soul of this child because they say it's a Vishnu devotee. And Shiva says, that's true, any Vishnu devotee you cannot take by yourself. But if the time has come, his Jivatma has to come away. So I will go personally out of respect for him. Then Yama goes there and he has a noose, like a rope with a circle around it, and he throws it on the boy to bring his Jivatma. But what happens is the boy is holding on to the Shivalingam, and when he throws the noose, that rope, both the boy and the Shivalingam fall down together. At that time, Shiva comes out of the lingam and he's in a fury. He says, how dare you? I'm the one who's in charge of destroying the whole universe. How dare you put the noose around me? So the Yama explains to Shiva, this is the situation. I didn't realize that the Shivalingam also will fall. What shall I do now? So Shiva says, and Yama tells Shiva, see, you are the one who made all the rules. I am Dharmaraja. That is, I cannot be partial to one person. What do? You give me the solution. So Shiva thinks and he says, I said that when he completes 16, his time will come, he will die. But I will give him a boon that he will always be 16. He will never grow beyond 16 years. Now you have to understand that he is giving the soul of the boy an initiation into the Shodasi mantra, the 16-lettered Sri Vidya mantra. Sri Vidya is Panchadasakshari and Shodasi, the completion, which Sri is the Shodasi. He is giving him that mantra, and the boy has, because of his high receptivity, the mantra, as soon as it is given, the boy has received it into him, which makes him immortal and always remains 16. In other words, he remains Shodasi all his life. That Devi comes into him. So that is how it is said that he conquers death. Earlier I told you. So now here is this boy. He visualized Narayana in all the Pancha Mahabhutas. That is, I told you the other day, the Pancha Mahabhuta supports your physical body, in which the Jivatma is embodied. That is the fire, water, air, earth, space, ether. He visualizes Narayana in all these, in the sun, in the moon, and in his own self. And out Manasa Puja, in his mind, he conceived the articles he will use for worshipping, and he brings it from his mind and he does the worship. And he continues with the worship. However, once in a way, when he gets so emotionally overwhelmed, he forgets worshipping. Just brief times. Then one day what happens, he is sitting on the bank of the river Pushpabhadra. Suddenly a strong wind comes up. Then immediately that strong wind comes. It's a furious wind, like a major tempest. Frightful looking clouds came, flashes of lightning, rain fell thick like a cartwheel, and all the oceans were seen on four sides, terrible whirlpools, a loud roar, and the ocean engulfed the earth on all sides with their waves. All the creation went inside and were swallowed up in the waters. The water rose high as much as a sky. Earth was filled with water. And Markandeya looked at all these terrible waves and the water tossed about by a violent wind, the earth being submerged, the whole universe, including the Devata, Devaloka, everything is disappearing into that water. Markandeya was the only living being left. He drifted along with the water like a blind person. I mean, he was feeling very stupid. He didn't know what this is happening. It was a completely different dimension. And he was tossing. He was oppressed with hunger and thirst. The whales and alligators and all were biting him on the side. He was beaten by the storm, endless darkness. Every place he looked around was dark. He was just drifting along. He could not even swim because he was completely exhausted. Sometimes he was caught up in a whirlpool, sometimes he was moved out by the sea, and suddenly he started feeling sorry, sad. He said, "Oh my God, now I'm really going to die." And that moham that he experienced with wanting to live, and the sorrow that he felt, and the fear, the panic he suffered death, although he was not dying. And in this way, for millions and millions of years, he was drifting along that big deluge, and his judgment was completely clouded by Maya Shakti. Remember, he asked that he wants to see Maya. Then, when he was rolling about in that, he saw an elevation of earth at a distance, and in that, which is almost floating in the water, there was a banyan tree covered with leaves and fruits. On one branch of the tree, lying in a leaf, he saw a baby. And that baby was shining and it had its foot in the mouth. You know how children will hold their leg, bring it to the mouth and suck their toe? It was like that. And when he saw this child, suddenly he felt a little more energetic. And his child was blue green in color, and very sweet and pretty. It was smiling at him. And the eyes were like lotuses, large eyes. And he had charming fingers, and he was holding the feet with that and sucking his toes. Immediately, the exhaustion of the sage completely disappeared. His heart opened out with happiness. He didn't know why at that time. His hair stood on end. He swam sort of towards the baby because he wanted to see who this baby was. And as he swam towards the baby inhaled and he entered the body of the baby along with the breath. And inside the belly of that baby, he saw the universe completely, like Yashoda saw, as it was before this great pralaya. He was astonished, he didn't understand. He saw the Bhur Bhuvaswaha, the earth, Antariksha, the Swarga, and all the devatas, all the rishis, the mountains, the seas, the demons, the forests, the countries, the residents of farmers, herdsmen, the entire universes, including the Pancha Mahabhutas. And he saw even the Himalaya mountain and the river Pushpabhadra, his own hermitage, and the rishis there. And while he was looking at it, he was thrown out of the body of that baby through its exhaled breath. So like this, he went into the body with the baby inhaling, saw all this, and when the baby exhaled, he came out and he again saw this big ocean that had submerged the earth. And looking at it, he went on looking at it, and suddenly the entire thing disappeared, the whole thing, and he was standing in his hermitage as he was before. And realizing that this was the glory of Yoga Maya, the creative energy of Lord Narayana, and he had asked that he wanted to see his Maya. He had had an experience of this. He realized that even Maya will not help. Because of Maya, you're thrown back into the universe. So he held on in his mind to the feet of Narayana. And by holding it, he did not fall a prey to this moha, Maya, and the delusion. Now, when this was happening, on the skies, Shiva and Rudra, that is, Shiva, that is the god of destruction, and his wife Uma, Parvati, saw this Markandeya sitting with a very calm face, holding on to the feet of um, Mahavishnu, Narayana. So Uma spoke to Shiva and she said, look at this Brahmana. His body, senses of mind and mind have everything become still. And he's looking so calm and serene. Now give him the fruit of his tapas, because Shiva is the one who gives the fruit of tapas. Then the Shiva tells Uma, Bhavani, they call her Bhavani here because she has become the universe again. And then he says, we will talk with the saint because it's the greatest punya for us to meet such a pious soul. See what he is saying. Shiva is saying, to meet such a pious soul, such a Brahmana who has a Brahma Jnana, who is with the Paramatma, for us it is a punya to meet him. So let us go now and talk to him. So the Sukha who's telling the story, he says, the Shiva and Parvati, Shiva, the Lord who is the resort of people who follow Dharma, the ruler of all embodied souls, came to Markandeya, who at this point had no mind. All his mental faculties was left out because he was neither conscious of his body or of the outside world. He did not even see Shankara and Parvati coming. Shankara, with the virtue of his Yoga Maya, entered Markandeya's heart. And there Markandeya felt amazed at seeing the flash of Lord Shiva in his heart suddenly, like lightning, with his tiger skin and his Rudraksha, Damaru, begging bowl made of Kapala, that is the skull, sword and bow, club, and suddenly he wondered where that vision was, and then he woke up from that different dimension of consciousness, came back to his normal state of consciousness, and he worshipped them with his heart. And Shiva says, ask a boon of your choice, whatever you want, because we three, now you listen to this, we three, Brahma, Vishnu, and myself, Shiva, we are the masters of those who are capable of granting boons. When we cast our glance upon a person, any mortal can attain immortality. That is the grace that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are. Not only in this world, but any world, myself, Brahma, and Narayana do worship to Brahmanas who are pious, pious by nature, who are tranquil, without attachment, yet affectionate and compassionate towards all created beings, who are exclusively devoted to us, and look upon everybody with an equal equanimity. They don't find any difference between me, Narayana, or Brahma, nor between themselves and other living beings. Therefore, we, that is Brahma, Narayana, and Shiva, we three come to you and worship you, people who are Brahmajnanis, and enter into the Paramatma. He says, sacred places don't exist of holy waters or idols which alone represent the gods. The sacred waters and the lifeless idols purify a man through a long process of time. The sacred waters and lifeless idols purify a man through a long process of time, whereas saints like you purify others with the mere darshan. Just looking at you, people get purified. You tell me what you want as a boon, because you've got almost everything. You're immortal, and that ask whatever you want. So he says, there is nothing that I want, but if you want to shower blessings on me, give me unfailing devotion to the Almighty Narayana and to those devoted to him, as well as to yourself. In other words, unfailing devotion to Narayana and to Shiva himself. So Shiva, then this Sukha says, and since the sage spoke in such sweet words, Shiva, who was the destroyer of the universe, supported by Shakti, said, let this desire of yours be fulfilled, and we will give you another boon also. Let your fame endure till the end of this kalpa. Let religious merit, that is spiritual merit, and immunity from old age and death be enjoyed by you. You will also know the past, present, and future. And teaching a Purana will be what we want you to do. And what Purana did Markandeya teach? Markandeya Purana, in which the Saptashati is. Saptashati is the story and the worship of Shodasi, the mother, as Durga in her form of Mahalakshmi, Maha Saraswati, and Maheshwari together. So this is the story of Markandeya. And I want to get on to yet another smaller story. The other story is about one of Shiva's devotees. There is a place called Sri Kalahasti. You must have heard of it. It's close to Tirupati. So what happened there was a Shivalingam there made of Karpura. Karpura is, I'll tell you later, I don't get the English name. What you do arti within the temple.
Camphor.
Correct, camphor. So Vayu did penance there to the camphor lingam. And Shiva was so pleased with Vayu because it's a movable energy. It's always moving around. He had that potential, but he said he became immovable for so many years to do this tapas. The energy of that, the deity of that energy, he says, I want to give you 3 boons. Ask whatever you want. So Vayu says, first, I want to be everywhere in the world. That's when it started moving around. And then he says, I want to be an integral part of every jiva in the universe. That is manifested. That's how it becomes prana. And the name that is called Karpura Lingam should now be called after me. So it is called the Vayu Lingam in Sri Kalahasti, which is also called Sri Kalahastishvara. Now, in that place, it so happened also that at one time, because of Vayu's penance, all the divine souls, the rishis, the devatas, everybody would come and worship the Kalahastishvara, the Vayu Lingam. And at one time, Parvati was cursed by Shiva to leave her Sukshma Sharira, heavenly body, and become a human being. She came to Kalahasti and she did a long penance. After which she was happy and he recreated her body, they said. That means he must have made the Atma Sharira, her Sukshma Sharira, out of mantras. And it was 100 times better than the previous heavenly body. He initiated various mantras there, including the Panchakshari. And there she came to be called Shivajnana Prasuna Ambika. So here is the place where Shiva comes and talks to Markandeya, what I told you a little earlier. And he told him one thing. He said a guru alone can make the deeper teachings towards a disciple. And because he is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva together, he says, because of that, the Guru, because he is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, he becomes all three because all three divinities or all three consciousness enter into him. It creates his Sukshma Sharira, the Guru, maintains it, and when the time is over, the Guru helps the Panchamahabhutas to leave the body and carries the Sukshma Sharira towards the higher spheres. So this is what he says. And near that place, there was a village. It was called Udiyapur. Now it is called Vuttukuram. And there was a chief of the hunting tribe called Nagan or Nagavyada. And that chieftain and his wife did a lot of penance for a son. And the son was born and he was called Tinnan. Tinnan means in Tamil strong. So it means he was a strong boy. Dinna, like that. So this father was a great Shaiva devotee, especially to Kartikeya. And Tinnan and his wife Neela, Tinnan grew up, got married. And he was a staunch devotee of this Vayu Linga of Sri Kalahasti, which at that time was not in a temple. He found it in a forest while hunting. And because he was a hunter, he did not do puja, but he would go to the Swarnamukhi river that was nearby. He used to hunt, so he would have the dead deer or whatever in one hand and his weapons in the other hand, the hunting implements. So he didn't know how to bring water because he had seen the priest pouring abhishekam on the lingam. So he would take the water in his mouth and he would bring it to the lingam and spit it on the lingam so that it will be bathed. And if any animal that he got that day, like a wild pig or something which he had killed, he would give it as flesh. He would cut it and give a good part of the flesh as Naivedya. And Shiva accepted it because this man had a pure heart and true bhakti. So the regular priest would come and he would see all this as being dirty. He would get irritated. He would clean it all up, put the proper flowers and fruits and everything. And next day, Tinnan would come in the morning. evening, because he would go hunting in the morning, and he would think, who has dirtied all this place by putting the flowers and all that. So he would again bring that meat that he had hunted and the water in his mouth, and he would spit it over the lingam to give it abhishekam, and he would offer the meat as the naivedya. Once Shiva wanted to test his devotion. So what he did was he created a major tremor. The roof of the temple began to fall. All the sages, priests, everybody ran away, except Tinnan, who covered the lingam with his body so that it won't get damaged. So people started calling him Dhira in the village. Dhira means the um, person who is unafraid. And when he was holding that, he saw that one eye of the linga was oozing blood and tears. So he tried wiping it. It was still bleeding. So he thought, now what to do? And there is nobody to help. So he took his arrow and plucked out one of his eyes, placed it on the eye of the lingam. That stopped bleeding. Now what happened? The other eye began to bleed. So he wanted to pluck out his other eye and place it on the lingam. Now, if he plucked out that eye also, he would become blind. He won't know which position to keep it when both eyes are gone. So what he did, he placed his foot on the place where the other eye should be, on the Shivalingam. He removed the other eye, and being blind, he felt for his foot where he had kept, and he placed the eye there. And moved by this extreme devotion, Shiva, who is called the Priya Bhakta, restored both his eyes and made him a Nayanar. Nayanar is one of the greatest devotees of Shiva, just like the Alvars are to Narayana. So this is the only temple in Kalahasti which is open during the lunar and solar eclipses also, because there is Rahu Ketu Puja. And you will be very interested to know one fact. You know, Swami Niranjan does the Pasupata Astra Yajna. Now, the Pasupata Astra was when the Pandavas went to the forest. Krishna came and told Arjuna, you go and do penance in the Himalayas. Let the others be here by themselves. So Arjuna goes to the forest to do penance. And when he goes there, he's sitting in penance for a long time, praying to Shiva to get the Pasupata Astra, because he wanted it for the war that was expected to come. So Shiva wanted to test him, and one time a wild boar charged at Arjuna when he was in meditation. He saw that boar, he got up, took his bow and arrow and shot the boar. When he ran to the boar, he saw there were two arrows there. So immediately there was a hunter by the side. He said, I shot the boar very good, I'll take it. So Arjuna felt very, his pride was hurt. He said, what rubbish? This arrow is mine. So he said, so that hunter says there are two arrows here. He says, in any case, I'm the best warrior in the whole world. So this hunter says, then let us have a battle and let us see who wins. So Arjuna takes the bow and arrow, and then he fights very well with the hunter. Hunter is so impressed. But after some time, when he takes the bow and arrow and he tries to shoot the hunter to death, the arrow doesn't move, Arjuna's hand doesn't move, the bow doesn't move, and he's so shocked. Then he realizes this hunter is nobody but Shiva himself testing him. So he falls at his body becomes, he's able to move, he falls at Shiva's feet, and he says, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that it was you, oh Lord. I was praying to you only for the Pasupata Astra for this. And Shiva was very touched and very impressed with Arjuna's capacity for war. So he gave him the Pasupata Astra. But he says, because you had the pride that you said, I'm the best warrior, even better than Shiva. Because he had that pride, Arjuna he said, you will go back and you will be born as a hunter and you will then get liberation, not earlier. So when Arjuna goes to the battle and Krishna tells him the Bhagavad Gita, the story is said that at the end, Arjuna says, I have understood what you have said. I am surrendering, which means he was not fully without the ego. How can you say, I am surrendering? Because you don't surrender. Surrendering happens. You can't say, I have understood, because where is the you? If you have understood, you have merged. When you have merged, there is no I, there is no ego there. So he was not yet complete. So he had to come back as Kannappa and break those barriers of pride and become a complete devotee and surrender to Shiva and be liberated. So these are the two stories I've told you today about bhakti in a different way, and bhakti also towards Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, who are one. Paramatma is only one. Our Vedas say Ekam Sat. The truth is only one. Ekam Sat. Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The wise men call him by different names, but there is only one Paramatma, only one point of power. So this is what I wanted to tell you. Tomorrow maybe I'll tell you something about the bhakti aspect of Islam. Would you like that?
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay. Was today's thing satisfactory for you?
It was very interesting. Not satisfactory.
Any questions anybody has? Anyway, these are the pictures I have sent you. So you can look at these pictures. You have Narayana speaking to him, Narayana on Garuda speaking to him putting his foot on the lingam and with his arrow plucking out the other eye, him as a child in the beginning, him trying to, Yama putting the noose and Shiva coming and saving him. So all that is there. And eventually, when he becomes Shodasi with that mantra, he visualizes the entire, because he can see the past, present and future. He visualizes what happens in the Saptashati. That is how Devi comes in three forms, in many forms, and she defeats the forces of evil when even the gods could not do it, and they prayed to her to help. So that's for today. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om Swami.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Swamiji.
Hari Om. Hari Om.